Well, hello, that's me again. Today is 21st of September, and as you might understand, the reason I come up here and to talk to you next day after my last video is precisely because of the events of the last 24 hours with the and my previous video pretty much describes it, that the game has changed dramatically, in fact, completely. And we are talking about the partial mobilization, which is, of course, completely tied to the fact of the 4 referenda in the Zaporozhye, Kherson, Lugansk, and Donetsk regions of Ukraine, which means we are talking about more than 100,000 square kilometers and more than 5 million people joining Russian Federation as the subjects of Russia, and because of that, that completely basically changes the dynamics of the special military operation, because it becomes absolutely clear that Russia is now in it for complete demolition of the Ukrainian state. And truth is, from what I learned so far, yeah, we're looking at about 300,000 additional personnel partially mobilized. Primarily that will be people who already served and who are in reserve, and most of them will be on the level of the sergeants and NCOs, and some junior officers, which is primarily for the issue of Russians have enough forces to man and provide the buffer zone in the new acquired Russian territories. And again, as I already stated, it's a significant territory, very significant, with the length of the border of around 1,000 kilometers, as Vladimir Putin stated yesterday, which is the line of the combat contact between the current forces and what remains of armed forces of Ukraine. And this is absolutely necessary, including for the provision of the fulfillment or proper fulfillment of the legal procedure of the decision which will be made on those referenda, because it is very clear now that upward of 80+% of the population of all those regions, they want to join Russia. Now, what happens after that? I don't know. And as I already stated, whenever Gerasimov calls me, Chief of General Staff of Russia calls me in the morning, I always forget him to ask him, Valery Georgevich, what is going to happen? Why don't you tell me your plans? But hey, what do I know? So, but I will ask him next time he calls me. So, but other than that, we have to understand that there was a state of actually stasis on the western side, so to speak. And the fact is, as I am on the record again, the level of incompetence and cliches from the western, be that political or military brass, is astounding. Those people are incompetent. And that's what this whole thing is about. For example, if you look at the Pentagon planning, so to speak, the only thing they can plan is PR. They really cannot plan. They don't have experience with winning anything or fighting real serious enemies. So their idea was pretty much to throw a bunch of the Ukrainians, which they did, at Russian defenses. And that's what is important. Then Sergei Shoigu, Russian defense minister, he was actually unequivocal, and he was very clear with his numbers. And we can tell now official numbers of Russian losses killed, and those are total losses of killed. KIAs are 5,937 Russian troops have died. So, and in terms of wounded, he mentioned some number, but most of those wounded, I don't know how many really, but most, that's what he said, have been back and recovered fully. So these were probably not the heaviest wounds. And here comes the losses of the Ukrainian side, which Russian military calculated. That means Russian military could count the bodies. And what they could count the bodies is amounts to 61,207 killed. And if you look down there, basically the text of this statement and interview by Sergei Shoigu, you will also see that basically there are 49,368 others wounded, but then again, do not forget, it's what the Russian Ministry of Defense can confirm. And judging by the hospitals in Kharkov, in Nikolaev and Odessa and Kryvyi Rog, basically packed with wounded, and the fact is that some people with their regular, everyday life issues have to wait for the surgeries, it tells you that we're looking at a much larger number. Having said all that, even that is astounding, because we are looking at 1 to 10 kill ratio, which pretty much confirms the technological and tactical and operational superiority of Russians. And then you can also see that Shoigu mentioned that more than 2,000 mercenaries have been annihilated, and as it is known right now, slightly above 1,000 foreigners currently remain in the Ukrainian military. And we also know that Prince Salman of Saudi Arabia negotiated the release of some few of the mercenaries from Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom, US, and Croatia, something like that. Russians gave him some of those POWs, which are not really POWs, they're basically mercenaries. So otherwise, they would have been executed. So this is what we have now. And now they say, what's the strategy? What's this or that? Difficult to say, So obviously we will have a really much more fresher blood, so to speak, pouring in. Ramzan Kadyrov wanted actually 85,000. Russia said, hey, let's go for 300,000. So, and again, Shoigu was very specific in terms of stating that it's a minute part of Russian mobilizational potential. And Russia can mobilize immediate mobilization more than 2.5, closer to 3 million people under the rifle immediately, if need be. And then larger mobilization reserves are there. So, and obviously Pentagon and NATO, they needed to react to that. They didn't expect it. So everybody thought that this issue of the referendum, which everybody were talking about for a while now, would be kind of postponed, will be sometime in the future. Well, it's not the case anymore. The referendum starts tomorrow. And actually probably today already in those territories, and yeah, we know the result. Obviously it will be called sham and what have you, but again, hey, well, we know how the referendum in Kosovo went. If anybody wants to, recall the events of the 23 years ago. So this is the thing, and evidently there is an absolute shock actually, because basically what was coming from the NATO headquarters, not that the Stoltenberg is competent to talk about anything, or from this clown Rear Admiral of PR, Mr. Kirby, but we have to look up this, for example, statements. Evidently Stoltenberg, he has issues of comprehending, not only reading, evidently, but he doesn't understand shit from Shinola, and he doesn't understand what really nuclear conflict is and what Vladimir Putin was talking about. So this creep comes out, and he states that Russia cannot win nuclear conflict. NATO says this. Okay, sure. So such a war is unwinnable in general, but by Russia in particular, the head of the alliance claims. I have no idea what he means by that. So Russia has about 6 times the required, actually the number of Russian nuclear weapons is enough to obliterate all life on Earth 6 times over. So what does it mean by Russia in particular? And he also talks about that Russia cannot win a nuclear war and has been amassing troops on its eastern borders to remove any room for miscalculation or misunderstanding. First, there is no understanding on NATO part. Those people are literally incompetent. They cannot fight their way out of the wet paper bag. And when you look at, for example, Pentagon or UK and the Royal, basically General Staff or the Ministry of Defense, those people are clowns, pardon me, and they don't understand the basic things. I'm not talking about Stoltenberg, who is economist by education. That means he has no applicable education to start with. And when people say about nuclear exchange, they evidently didn't listen and didn't read the printout what Vladimir Putin was saying. He didn't threaten, as they tried to present it, actually. The threats of use of nuclear weapons came from this bimbo, who is now the Prime Minister of United Kingdom, Liz Truss, who stated that, oh, she will push the button, if she needs to, to deploy the nuclear deterrent. But again, I don't know how many really warheads it takes to really flatten the Brussels and United Kingdom, but believe me, a couple of the nuclear strategic missile submarines will be more than enough. So, and when you listen to these people, you obviously have to look at also the delusion and absolute incompetence. They parade themselves as the military incompetence for a while now. When you have this Rear Admiral in PR, who has degree in international relations and history, and he is also the guy who evidently did all his life some kind of the editorial work and press conferences. And he comes out today on the on Fox, obviously, and he's talking about that this is what turned the tide on the Russia-Ukraine war. I have no idea what is he talking about. What tide? If Mr. Kirby graduated a Naval War College, which he did, it doesn't mean that he understands what actually ground warfare is and how it's fought. In fact, I'm pretty sure most of American generals don't understand it because they never won shit in their life. They lost all their wars. But the question is here, what does it mean here, turn around or tide the war? Last time I checked, actually, and even Sergei Shoigu basically showed that we're looking at 1 to 10 kill ratio. And basically that's what it is. It's a slaughter of the Ukrainian armed forces. And I don't see any serious gains in anything. Of course, Mr. Kirby operates based on the bullshit which is being pumped and piped into the American intel community by Ukrainians. But hey, he is Rear Admiral. What do I know? The guy probably commanded platoon in his life, or maybe a company, or maybe the ship. I don't know. I doubt it. He did it. So in this particular case, when we talk about any experience with the command and tactical and operational issues, he has zero. And again, he's just merely press secretary. That's what it is. But he talks about this. And so he's talking about Mr. Biden, but again, as what many people try to constantly press me with this thing is that, oh yeah, but what does, West think about it? Russians do not give a damn about what West thinks about this or any other things. That's what they don't understand. And fact is, you cannot talk to people who basically operate within this PR bubble, PR environment, and have no touch with the reality. Do some of them have it somewhere in Pentagon? Yes. Yes, there are some people who are competent enough, as I already stated. Those colonels, brigadier generals who run whatever the departments and work in some and serve in some commands, they understand what is going on. But even they have to kind of give the basically how to say it, recognition or cognizance to the fact that Russians are also increasing their grouping in Syria, as a matter of fact, unlike it is actually, pardon me, stated in Western media. So we have this situation, and there is another thing, and that thing is even more fascinating. Apart from spewing all kinds of BS and basically fantasies about that Russia threatens with nuclear weapons, Russia doesn't threaten with nuclear weapons, but she threatens in terms of use them if Russia is attacked by NATO alliance, nuclear way. So, and again, but again, Stoltenberg doesn't read Russian military doctrine. He won't understand most of it anyway. So, and but here's the thing which is really fascinating, and I'm talking about just absolutely fascinating. And we know that midterms coming. We know that this whole thing was basically based and tied. I'm talking about Ukrainian adventurism of the West to their, so to speak, victory and projected victory of the Democrats in midterms and probably retaining the White House. But here it is. Chris Murphy there claims a Republican Congress will ramp down military aid for Kyiv. In an interview with the Washington Post on Tuesday, Murphy stated that there is a real risk that the $12 billion additional commitment that President Joe Biden administration has recently requested could be the last time the U.S. supplies funding to Ukraine. You'll say, why are Democrats so worried about Ukraine? And let me put it this way. As a friend of mine stated, Mr. Byron King, the only great city armed forces of Ukraine have been able to capture is obviously Washington, D.C. That's true strategic and tactical success, and we have to kind of continue to observe how this basically osmosis of the Democratic National Committee and Democratic Party political top and Ukrainian basically organized crime and regime kind of mutually penetrated each other. And obviously when you begin to look at who Joe Biden is and how he is related to Ukraine and what they are doing this, it becomes very clear what is happening there. Not only there is a lot of laundering of the money, but there is obviously this crazy idea by those neocons who dominate America's foreign policy and are extremely uneducated people, militarily, historically, economically, that they somehow can create second Afghanistan for Russia. Of course, they never learned what actually the first Afghanistan was, but or that they create and bog Russia down in Ukraine. And then for the last 6 months, they've been actually hysterical because there was no bogging down. And from what we see even on the maps today, I mean, looks like Russians occupying now the territory the size of the United Kingdom. And this partial mobilization is the issue which will help to basically, I don't know how it will go. I do not want to speculate here. Will the Russians drive directly towards Nikolaev and Odessa, or they will allow them to ripen and then kind of fall into the fault? But it is clear that Ukraine is, as such, begins from now on cease to exist as the viable state. So that brings us to the other issue. Obviously, Poles are going bananas, especially their political top, but there's nothing new about it. I mean, they always were extremely Russophobic, they always were pro-Anglo-Saxon, and they always were actually very, very myopic, and that is why Poland have been partitioned and run over periodically. So, but looks like they really want the Volyn and other areas of Ukraine, and as I already stated, should they have behaved themselves more amicably towards Russia, that issue probably would have been settled a long time ago. But looks like they will get it anyway. But now the main issue, of course, that what is Romania's claim, and Russia actually reacted to the words of former Prime Minister of Romania a few days ago very calmly when he stated that Ukraine actually is sustains itself and exists today in totally superficial borders. And of course, Bukovina and other areas of Ukraine, they do have large Romanian population. Those people are Romanians. And last but not the least is obviously the issue of Hungary. And Hungary having claim on the territory. So if you look attentively at that, and when you begin to kind of put things together, in terms of basically what Russians' plans are, which we can only now perceive somewhat. And again, these are primary hypothesis. This is not, if you think so, that I'm sitting here giving you forecasts. I'm telling you, I don't know. Again, Gerasimov never tells me. Whenever we speak to each other, he never tells me. I tried to call Vlad Putin, but you know what? The Kremlin doesn't answer phone calls anymore. Macron tried for several days. He has been told, he has been put on hold. And I'm not kidding. Macron tried to call Kremlin. Kremlin declined to communicate with him. So, and that's what is going on. Again, Russia is not going to talk to Europe, and we'll see what how it's going to affect also the energy supply, which already basically what is happening right now. It's a de facto suicide of Europe in progress. Russia may talk to the United States, but it's noblesse oblige, so to speak, the position which makes you talk, because the United States is still a player, unlike it is Europe. So we'll see. But what we know now that indeed the special military operation as such kind of will continue, but what it's going to be upgraded in terms of the fire impact, oh, I think so. We will see much more intense, not fighting, slaughter of the Ukrainian armed forces, and whatever will be thrown in the last-ditch attempts to show some kind of PR things for Mr. Kirby to go out and spew bullshit, which he usually does. And then we'll see. So I do not give any forecasts, but I think so that, yeah, Russia will have enough forces to secure basically pretty much what we've been talking about for a while now, and which is kind of self-evident. This is LDNR republics, now full administrative borders of Zaporozhye, Kherson region, and of course then we will see probably some thrust towards Nikolaev and Odessa. But we'll see how it will go. So Russia will have enough forces to do that and smash pretty much anything what is going to be thrown at them by armed forces of Ukraine and their handlers from Pentagon and NATO. And again, people, when especially this idiot Stoltenberg talks about massing NATO troops, he obviously doesn't understand what massing is, and that, again, I can only repeat one thing of my friend Vladimir Trokhan, the colonel of the Central Apparatus of Ministry of Defense of Russia, who stated that, yeah, you know, we don't sweat about European NATO. I wouldn't. So, and that's what we have for today, and that's why I needed to do this kind of short talk. And we'll see where it is all going. We are in the, you know what, in the fundamental tectonic change in the process of this gigantic change of the geopolitical balance of forces, including, for example, when Mr. Xi today stated in his address to armed forces of China to be ready for the real war. And so United States doesn't want to become the second-rate power. Well, it is already, actually, and if not for the nuclear weapons, and is still very significant and world-class U.S. Navy, despite its huge problems already. Yeah, United States, just what it is, you know, it's another major power which will be probably limited to its island position in the North America, and judging by the speed and, so to speak, the dynamics of its disintegration and dissolution of American social, cultural, military, and economic institutions, yeah, that's what we have, really. You know, it's becoming increasingly the third world, despite some shiny appearances in some places. I'm really sad to say this, but that's what it is. And again, look up the title of my last book, which came out in 2021. So this is what I wanted to tell you today, and I'll certainly will be talking to you more about this. So as always, guys, my profound gratitude to my sponsors, to my patrons, and those who can support me, of course, please support me on Patreon, and those who like what I do, feel free to subscribe to my channel. So guys, have a nice rest of the week, and I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.